I'm AC Dodd, and this is Engine Club. So, Engine Club. Today it's a gearbox. Kevin's got his gearbox that he wants to rebuild for his engine build. It's this nice, greasy, horrible unit here. So we're going to go through and take this apart in a little while. But first we'll talk to Kevin about some of the stuff that we've gone through before we start working on the gearbox. Right, Kevin, you've all seen Kevin before, so he's back with his gearbox this time. So let's just have a talk about what we've just gone through. So we haven't even stripped the gearbox yet, but what have we done so far?
It's been a learning morning. So we've been looking at, well, I've been trying to look at understanding how the gearbox works, how the drive comes in from the engine through the gearbox and then out through the diff and obviously into the drive shaft. So yeah, been discovering about the first motion shaft and the first motion gears, and then how that goes on to the lay shaft and the lay gears across, also onto the third motion shaft, and then out through the pinion and crown wheel. And then really A's done a great job really helping me to understand as well then what we're looking at in terms of wear, how quickly different parts can wear out and why it wears out due to things like torque. So for instance, first gear, looking at the lay shaft gear, is that right? Lay shaft gear and how that drives onto the third motion shaft, onto the first gear, basically first gear on the third motion shaft. And that what we've got here is a torque multiplication as the power comes in and goes across onto the lay gears and then through from this, which is a straight cut gear on the first gear. And because the teeth are straight, which makes it straight cut, we've got less surface and a constant surface rather than second and third gears where they're tapered and where effectively the torque helical, thank you, it then rolls that force between the two as they mesh together, whereas here we've just got one contact patch. And of course first gear on the lay gear, it's very small. We've got high amounts of torque because we're multiplying the torque through to push the car forwards, and that's basically hammering against that many times over.
Yeah, so we talked about the why the smaller gear might wear faster than the bigger gear, and that's effectively because that gear has only got 15 teeth and the bigger gear's got 31, so it's doing just over twice as many. Every tooth is doing twice as many hits as the one on the larger gear, so that's one of the reasons why you get more wear on that particular gear. And obviously it's got a higher torque multiplication on it, and it's interesting when I do these gearbox sessions with the Engine Club people, is they need to understand how the gearbox works and where to look for wear and why bearings are like they are. So it's quite interesting that, you know, when you look at where the loads are, and then you can quite easily see why the designers have put certain bearings in when they have, which is quite interesting. You know, so you know, why is there the double roller there and there's only the single roller there? Well, there's a lot more torque and that does a lot more work than this end. So at the end of the day, these are fairly straightforward. One of the other things that Kevin's been doing is he's been working out his gearbox ratios. So we've just got the whiteboard up there, and this, as you can see from that, is a standard gear set. And how do we know it's a standard gear set? Because this one, that's the identification groove in the lay gear, and it's also in the main helical gears, one groove. That tells us it's a standard ratio set. If that had two grooves in it, that would be the wide ratio gear set with a 4:1 first gear, but this is the standard ratio with the 3.6:1 first gear, 2.185 second and 1.425. So what Kevin was doing was using my calculator with the fraction function and doing all the teeth counts and then working out the ratios. So the idea there is
old school.
Yeah. Look at that beauty, old school. But the idea there is so that Kevin can understand how the gearbox works. So it's, you know, what one of the problems with people when they work on their cars is they'll just look at the thing with no idea how it works whatsoever. So at least now Kevin has an understanding. Has that been helpful?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, really helpful, and it's so helpful to understand then, for instance, how the torque goes through the gearbox and why it's designed the way it is, where the problems might be and why they might be there, because it's always great to be able to understand it and then be able to hopefully build a stonking gearbox that's not going to fail anytime soon.
That's the idea. Anyway, right, so let's start stripping now. So we've done some understanding. Now we need to start tearing it apart. So if you put the gearbox, that's it, diff facing upwards. Wonderful. And then the first thing you need to do, see the lock tabs?
Yeah, bend those tabs out.
Look at that. Not tab flat.
Completely flat, yeah?
Yeah. It's just worth mentioning for the camera that Kevin's never done a gearbox before, so this is his first time. All right. So I don't expect it to be absolutely perfect, and nor should you expect it to be absolutely perfect. Put your tools back in the black tray. Now, if you grab the middle, that's it. It should be going the right way. What you want to do is take out the bolts.
These ones, yeah?
Yeah, just whiz them out.
Put into the tray, yeah?
Into the metal tray, yeah.
Nice and whizzy.
Right, so first things first, when you take these things apart, you can either put everything into the tray, or you can, break up the monotony a bit, and although it takes longer, you can inspect things as they come off. All right. So what I would suggest here is, rather than taking the gaskets off at the moment, all we need to do is we need to get the oil seal out, and then we can actually have a look at the. Let's put that on a flat bench, right there. And give that a push down. Put your hand in. Hold it hard.
Yep.
Right. Seal out in the bin. Give that bearing a wipe round with the blue rag that's next to you. If you take the hot joint on the bench.
Yep.
Pick that up, and then try that and see what the fit's like. That's it. And then put it in, try it, and then wiggle. Give it a wiggle. How much wiggle's on that bearing?
Fair amount.
Oh yeah.
Not like.
Okay. So let's have a feel. Now you can measure these. If you're rebuilding the gearbox, I would say that's well worn but not worn out.
Yeah.
But in reality, I would be wanting to replace that anyway, because if you're going to rebuild a gearbox, there's no point in putting worn bits back on that are nearly worn out. Yeah. So I would put that in the pile of stuff to replace.
To be improved.
So now if you turn the gearbox around to make it easier to face it towards you, that's it, so you can get the other side plate off. That's it, spin those bolts out.
She got some grunt, this girl, hasn't she?
Yeah. Well, it's the same one you've got. So,
yeah.
Makes easy work of that, doesn't it?
It's quite nice having the
lights.
Well, no, just having the different drive. It's just making me think, maybe.
Yeah. There's a reason why I go for the sizes I go. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's great because then I can do wheel nuts and everything with that one, and then stick the battery in a.
So get your the next tool that you need, that I like to use when I do gearboxes, is a tyre lever. Old school. But my dad showed me this. Oh, you've already got it off.
Oh yeah, it came off quite easy.
Some of them, you just put it around the back there and lever it off.
Yeah, where it's not going to damage it.
So again, same thing. Take your seal out. Try that one.
What's our predictions?
Lean it over into
Much the same, I reckon. Almost feels just tinsy bit more.
bit more than
Bit
the
more
other.
play,
Okay,
yeah.
So we need to replace those. So what we now need to do, if you just show that into the camera, right, that bronze bushing that's on the inside needs to be replaced on these output shafts to before we put this back together. Right, so if we turn it back round so that faces that way. Okay, so now what you need to do is take the shims out, which are on this side. That's it, finger, just lift them out. Is that all of them? Run your finger around and make sure there's no more in there. Yep,
Yeah, no,
good.
that's it, yeah.
Now this side, there is a spring and a ball, right? Now to get the ball out, put your cupped hand over there and then upend the gearbox. No, when I say upend it, I mean upend it.
Proper.
Yeah. That's it, right the way up. If it won't come out, then what we'll do is we'll use Mr. Screwdriver. All right, does it not come out?
No.
Okay, put it back down on the bench. Screwdriver in there and cock that sideways. That should, yeah, okay. Give it a wobble, maybe.
There we go.
All right.
Yep.
Now, is the ball in it? No, the ball's still in
No.
there. So same thing now. If you look in there, mind your head.
Yep.
Yeah. Upend the gearbox.
Here we go.
Ball's out. That's easy to lose, that one. So you know, make sure that you get that out before you start moving the gearbox. Now what we want to do is change over to the 9/16 socket. So that'll be the that's it, the one with the flat end on it.
7/16, that one.
Go up 2 sizes.
There we go.
Right, that's it. And whiz out the those ones.
Yep.
No particular order, just take them out. Easy with the right tools, isn't it?
I'm just imagining it now. The ratchet.
It's all right to. I'm quite happy to use a nut gun to take them apart, but I still use either a speed brace or a ratchet to assemble them.
So,
Back to the 7/16. Take those ones out. If you want to, you can take the extension off for that. Cool.
yeah.
Right, finish with that tool now. So now what we need to do, there's 2 ways you can lift that off. Remember, this is stuck onto here.
Yeah.
It's bonded on with RTB. So
Right.
first off, take that seal off. That's just an extra seal. Because it's one
With
below it.
the seal that
Bin
was, the seal that was
Yeah.
already making its way
off.
down the
Yeah.
shaft.
Okay, so now what we need to do is to lift that off. So there's a couple of ways of doing it. You can either put something in there, in that gap there, and
Yep.
lever it.
Yep.
Whereas I tend to and then just knock that upwards. Just give it a tap with your hand.
Starting to come.
That's it. Right, that's already. So now do one the other side. That's it. All right, and now wiggle both shafts with your hand, and it should just lift off with a bit of that. Maybe the tie lever again.
It's
Give it
just
a bit more of a push.
There
you
we
go.
go. It was just
Right.
at that back end.
That's it. Now turn it up.
It was on the pin at the back. It just
Yep.
wasn't quite.
So we've got that off. Now, interestingly, this is excellent demonstration of how you don't build one of these gearboxes. All right. So you'll notice there's a gasket here. Now this is a big mistake. On these gearboxes, where it says on the front 5626, these gearboxes are manufactured not to have the gasket. All right. So that is a mistake by the previous builder, because what that means is that'll add something like 0.08 of an inch extra spacing, which means that these holes won't be round, which means the bearings would are able to spin round. Now in this particular case, we don't see any evidence that they have actually been moving. All right, so if you just take it out of that one. So one of the things you have to do when you build these is to put the casing on the back and actually measure the hole to see if you need a gasket or not. In this case, you won't need a gasket, so someone has put that in erroneously, and what we need to do is to determine to make sure that that housing is actually the housing for this gearbox. So when you take a gearbox apart and you put it back together, you need to look for evidence. Now, if we look at this, we'll see that this is green paint and that's black paint. So the worry is that somebody's been in here before and swapped bits. So we don't actually know if that's the right housing for the back of this. So one of the things we do need to do is to check to make sure it is all the same. All right, so do you want to just lift that out of there? I'll do it now. Yep. There you go. So let's have a quick look at that. Put that over there. Yep. And then we'll see if we've got any marks in there. So there are some marks, but nothing that's going to cause us a problem. But it definitely has been moving because there's some lines, yeah. Right? And that's a sign. So it's serviceable, but it has moved, and that's because somebody's put gaskets on there, and that's because the gaskets are supplied in the rebuild kits, so people think that they need to fit them, but in actual fact what they do need to do is actually measure the housing. So what you need to do when you rebuild this and we clean the case up is we put it back together and we measure up the housing to make sure it's actually the right size, and if it isn't the right size we need to look at why that is and can it be rectified. Okay. What was the final drive fitted in that? If you just pick up the cram wheel diff, turn it over and show that face, you'll see around there in one of the gaps that you'll see some writing.
In this bit here.
Yeah. What does it say? Does it say 1959?
Is that 1G243?
Part number. Look at below it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can just about see 59. I can see the 59.
You can see the 59. All right. So yeah. We know from that that's going to be a 3.1 Cranwell opinion. All right. Okay, so that's the diff out. So now what we need to do is turn it round and then tackle this end.
Let me take off that.
Yep. So you start off on the outside, so take the bracket off first. You're going to need 1/2 inch. They won't be very tight. It's got a friction ring, not a, so it's a quick change socket. Alright, what I was actually going to say to you is you didn't need to do that, because once you take that out you pull the whole lot off and it would come off anyway. Alright, so if you now grab that, insert that fully, and that's it, push hard and give it full beans. Done.
Job's a good one.
Job's a good one. Take that off. Wonderful. So what now we'll do, if we turn the gearbox up on its end so the camera can see what's going on. Perfect. That's it. Just let it sit at a natural angle. The gearbox, it will find a natural.
There you go.
Right. So that one, and then that one. So that's 7/16, 7/16. Yeah. And the other thing, interesting thing to note is here, we've got a late gearbox with early bolts in. Right, so there's a mixture of fittings. That's a late bolt. that's a flange head, and these are all early, so you can tell somebody's been in here and doing things, and perhaps they've got these bits off an older gearbox. All right, so what we now need to do is spin this off, and what we're taking apart there is the Speedo housing and the end cap for the worm gear for the Speedo gear. All right, now that'll be stuck, so you just need a little tap. So just take the hammer and just tap it there very gently. A bit more. There you go. Off it comes. Right, now if we look into there, count how many teeth are on it. Just have a look. 5,
1,
6,
2,
or 7.
3, 4, 5, 6.
6. That's a good start. Okay, so take that one off. That's a 3/8. Wonderful. So what you want to do now is give that a tap on the corner just to pivot it round. That's it, and then pull it out. And then have a quick look, see how many teeth is on 17, I can tell by the shape.
Nice.
Alright, so we've got 6 on 17. So in reality, somebody put the wrong Speedo gears in this as well. So if that was in a Mini, that 6 on a 17 is for a 3/4 diff, not a 3/1. Alright, so you can see when people build gearboxes and they change all the sizes, that they don't get all the right Speedo drive gears and everything to match, which is one of the other things we do in Engine Club, is to make sure that when you build something it works properly.
Yeah.
Alright, so take those off. It's a 1/2 inch. In fact, I'll give you a deep socket for that. That's it. Now, just out of interest, do you know the difference between all these bolts? Because you're just willy-nilly taking all the bolts off and putting them in the tray.
You do.
You're absolutely correct.
I am at least keeping them in,
Right,
in some proximity.
So the bolts in these end housings are longer than the ones in the side plates.
Yeah.
So you have to remember, when you put these back together, if you forget which bolts go in what, you need to make sure you get the right ones in, because you can break the casing by winding a bolt in that's too long.
Too long, yeah.
All right. So if you just lift out the worm, push it from inside. Oh, you got it. Okay. Usually easy to push it from the inside out. You got that? Excellent. Yep. Now have a quick look at the shaft. Is it worn?
Well, difficult to say if it's excessively
give it a
worn.
wipe with
It's not too.
Because gearboxes now tend to be so. These things tend to be so worn that we have to replace the shaft. So that one, it's got some savagery on it, but I think a polish up and it'll be fine. In terms of will it go back in, well, it depends on what we're actually doing and what ratios we're gonna fit. Okay, so the next job is all the bolts out. There's one, should be one there.
Yeah,
so one there. That's gone out.
Yep.
Excellent. So now what we need to do is to pop the end cover off.
Lift or little tap?
Put it. No, you won't tap it off. I'll use a piece of wood. I'm gonna say a piece of wood. An old hammer handle. Right. So.
Like that?
No, that'll be the weakest point to hit it on. Put it on the main bit and then give it a wrap. Come on, a bit more. There you go. All right. Okay, wonderful. Now put the Speedo gear back in that hole and let's see how much wears on that hole. Give it a waggle. Some of these are quite worn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's got a fair bit of wear in it.
Yeah.
So what we might have to do here is replace this housing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now what we need to do is put your tools back in the tray, so we've got to keep our space nice and clear. Always get in a habit of keeping your work. If you put a tool down in the tray, it'll always be in the tray.
It's there.
Yeah,
Yep.
and you'll keep your work area clear. So put this face upwards.
This one.
Yeah. That's it. Now take off the oil pickup pipe bolts. That'll be a 3/8. Just so that everybody knows what we're doing here, what the tools you use.
We're using the Milwaukee. Well,
It's a Milwaukee mid-torque 3/8 drive in this
3/8
particular
drive,
case.
yeah,
This
fuel.
is fuel version. So this is a 650 foot-pound torque, impact wrench. We are using the lightweight 3 amp hour high output 21700 cell battery pack. Not that it needs it for this application, but I like it because it's the lightest way of using this tool. This tool's also nice and compact. So it does a nice job, and as you can see, it easily takes these bolts out of this gearbox with absolutely no hassle at all. So you know, I highly recommend this. It's a beast. It's a beast. Yeah, and I think you've got one of these at home, haven't you? But you've got the half-inch drive version.
Half-inch drive version, and don't tell my wife, but we might be getting more versions of it.
Carry on.
We'll be using my favourite gasket scraper on that.
Yeah, well, we'll get there once we work out what's what. This gearbox is nice and clean inside this one, isn't it? Okay, right. So put the gearbox back on with its base down. That's it, and then we can right. Now there's a good example. So if you just leave that up on its side, see the oil that's come out the back.
Yep.
Now just take off a couple of sheets of newspaper and scrunch it up, and we can keep the workplace clear. Newspaper's really good for soaking up oil. Well, that brings us to the end of part 1 of episode 4. Slightly different style there, with just a lot of the filming was done with a camera on the side, given an overhead shot. Please leave any comments below if you like that style or not. Any feedback is most useful. Anyway, as ever, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Thank you very much.